I didn't know what to do. You see, when I was a little kid, I had really big ears. Like big, sticking out like an elephant. At least that's what the other kids told me. I actually was born missing a fold in both my ears that really did cause those ears to stick out. And because of that, I was harassed. I mean, teased a lot. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know how to handle that. But, you know, after a handful of years of this, getting teased and teased and teased, eventually my parents came to me and said, there's a surgery, you could have a minor surgery that could help. Basically, a surgeon would make some small incisions behind your ear, pull that skin back, and that fold would get popped back in, and your ears would look kind of normal again. So we did that. I don't remember if I was 8 or 9 or 10, something like that. And the surgery went great. It worked decently well. But you know, after that surgery, I had to have this great big full head turban style bandage. And then after that, I had this headband style bandage. And then even after all that, I still had scar tissue and stuff behind my ears. And so the teasing continued and continued, and that harassment continued and continued. And it kind of really got into my psyche. All through those school years, it really kind of led to some deep-seated insecurities. I remember going to the barber and being nervous just to get my hair cut because I was worried if the barber saw behind my ears, he'd be grossed out by it or something. I remember if a pretty girl sat behind me in class, I was worried that she'd see behind my ears and be disgusted and wouldn't want to talk to me. So I had some major confidence issues, but I had one thing I could escape to. I had one place I could go to where I felt okay about myself. I could go in the outdoors into these wild places, and I could hunt, and I could fish, and I could camp, and I could hike, and I felt okay. I was doing something, and I could feel good about it. I was able to build some confidence. I was able to build an identity. And this continued, post-graduation. The older I got, the more and more bigger, wilder places I went to explore, and that same kind of growth continued. Developing that identity, that courage, that self-confidence, belief in yourself. And, as I'm standing here now today, quite literally, as I think about these things, I can say that I do think that these experiences in big, wild public places really forged who I am now. And we could sit up here and point to so many different reasons, I think, to celebrate and advocate for public lands. I mean, that's what we've been talking about all night here. But for me, I think it's this ability for these wild places to serve as a catalyst for personal growth that really stands out to me. And it's really been hammered home for me this past year. A handful of examples. Thought I'd share those with you today. For example, I think big, wild, they don't necessarily have to be big, but wild public places, I think, serve as a perfect place to face your fears. Learn how to face your fears, really. There's been a lot of talk about bears here tonight. And when I first started heading out west into grizzly country, I was scared shitless of bears. I remember one of the first trips that my wife and I took into grizzly country. We're in Wyoming, taking a hike in the Wind River Range, and we're heading into these mountains, and I'm on pins and needles. I mean, heads on a swivel. Every curve we went around, there's going to be a bear. Every hill we came over, there's going to be a bear. But we made it to the end of that hike, stopped for lunch, and I had to take a leak. So I walk off a few paces, take care of my business. All the time, head on a swivel, looking, taking care of my business. And all of a sudden, from behind me, my wife yells, "Mark!" And my heart just dropped. My stomach clenched. I just knew there was a grizzly coming. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that in the next few moments, I was about to engage in hand-to-hand combat with a grizzly to save my wife's life. So I spun around midstream, proceeded to soak my pants and my boots and my legs and everything around me. And then my wife says, "I just wanted to tell you something." There was no bear, but I was soaked for the rest of the day. Now fast forward 7 or 8 or 9 years, now I spent a whole lot more time in grizzly country. And now I'm in Alaska on a caribou hunt. Killed a caribou that night before, so now I'm covered in blood, my pack's covered in blood, my clothes are covered in blood, and I'm sleeping in a tiny one-person tent on the side of a mountain 100 miles away from the nearest road. And I'm sleeping like a baby. Next morning, I wake up though, and I open up the tent flap door. And I just remember the first thing I saw, it wasn't just this miles wide horizon of blue skies. It wasn't the undulating hills of tundra going on for 20, 30 miles in the distance. It wasn't the tundra or the wild blueberry patches. It was none of those things. I didn't see anything like that when I opened up the tent flap door. What I saw was this big, brown, shaggy, hulking mama grizzly and a cub right there in our camp. And I stood up, said, "Hey Bear, get out of here." And then I watched her run away. Then I laid back down in my tent for a little more sleep. A couple minutes later, though, it just kind of hit me. Holy shit, you've come a long way, Mark. This is a little different than it used to be. Public lands have also, probably most importantly, they forced me to come to terms with my insignificance in the bigger scheme of things. Realize how small I am in this world. And it happened again later that summer. My wife and I were on a hike, but this is a different kind of hike than those I'd had in the past because my wife became pregnant with our first child. And it was super exciting, but at the same time, it was also really scary. I'd always been worried about how having kids would impact my ability to do these things that I love to do, how it was going to impact my epic adventures and all these kinds of great goals and aspirations I had. It was a really selfish perspective, but it's kind of one of the main things I was thinking about. So we find out we're pregnant. We go to the doctor, and one of the first things I'm asking the doctor is, we've got all these plans, we're living out of a camper, we're climbing mountains, can we still do that? And she says, yeah, you can do a lot of those same things. You just need to listen to Kylie's body, and you need to make sure you're not spending too much time over, I think it was 8,000 feet elevation. Make sure you're not spending the night at too high of elevations. There's a whole bunch of different things that could go on with that. So I said, okay, that's great. Now, I'm always pushing things, though. And I always want to have this next great grand adventure. And so we go out on this hike, and it's over 8,000 feet, but I'm telling Kylie, it's going to be fine. It's just the day. We're going to do a quick hike. We'll be out of there. It'll be great. It's going to be so worth it. Let's go do it. It's going to be fine. So we go. We do this hike. Had a great time. Beautiful, beautiful country up there. This is in the Shoshone National Forest, southeast of the Yellowstone National Park. After the hike, we're driving out through the National Forest, and we come to this beautiful pull-off off this National Forest road. I'm thinking, man, this would be a great spot for us to camp. We could just pull off with the truck, sleep in the back of the truck. This would be an awesome way to end the night. It was over 8,000 feet, but I said, Kylie, it's going to be fine. It's just one night. Don't worry about it. So we pull off. We set up camp. We have a great night. We're in this beautiful meadow of wildflowers. Above us, you have this kind of cirque of towers of ice and rock, these big mountains, and not another soul in sight. There's nobody else around. It's all to ourselves. I'm thinking this is great. Great decision, Mark. We're getting ready for bed, though, and Kylie makes a remark to me that she's got a pretty bad headache. Didn't think too much about it, though. I thought, that happens sometimes. So we go to bed, and we're laying in bed there, and a little while later, she says to me that she's feeling lightheaded. And then I'm starting to get this that doesn't sound right. Now we're laying there in bed, and I'm kind of thinking about stuff, and maybe 10 minutes later, she says, I can't breathe. And so at that point, this switch flipped in my mind when I all of a sudden went from thinking, oh, everything's going to be fine, to what if things aren't going to be fine? We need to get off this mountain. So went into not panic mode, but got to get some shit done mode, and got my wife from the back of the truck up into the front of the truck, packed up camp as fast as I could, and we had to get on that road, and I had to get off this mountain. We had to get down in elevation because there's something serious going on here. I'm barreling down the mountain as fast as I possibly can, 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. It's completely black. There's elk, there's moose, there's deer, there's bears. There are all these things around here, but I can't worry about any of those things. We have to get off this mountain. And I look at my wife, and she's got this glazed over look in her eyes, and she has these really short, ragged breaths. I have to go faster. I have to get down off this mountain. I have to get her down to the lower elevation. And I look at her now, and now she's leaning her head against the window. Her breathing is really, really shallow, and she can't even hardly keep her eyes open. And I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. And I'm thinking to myself, what have you done here? Your stupid, selfish desire to have some great trip, to have some great story, to go do some epic adventure, your selfish desire to do these things could risk your wife's life, your son's life. And at that point, having no idea what to do, I just prayed, and I pleaded, and I held onto that steering wheel and had that pedal as far down as I possibly could. And I looked at my wife, and I just kept saying, just keep breathing. Stay awake. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And now here we are, and my 3.5-month-old son is sitting here right here today. And I love him. And I love him so much. And that night on that mountain, on those public lands, I learned that I don't matter anymore. My hopes and my dreams and my aspirations and my own personal goals, those things don't matter most anymore. He does. And I just want so badly for him to have big, wild public places, to have those same opportunities himself, to face his own fears, to make his own mistakes, to learn his own lessons, and to grow from them. So now I do know what to do. For the rest of my life, I have to fight for these places. I have to fight for these opportunities. I have to fight for him. Thank you.